Hey guys, I've got some new artwork for you today. It's been a little bit since my last video, and it's mainly because I became a dad since my last video. So it's really exciting, and that's obviously been where most of my time is being spent. But we got a little bit of a routine going now, so I think I can start doing some more videos again. Today I've got this painting I did in Procreate. Yeah, I hope you guys like it, and I just want to say thanks for sticking around. Thank you for all your comments and for subscribing to my channel. I'll get back to answering your comments now. It's been a while. I've kind of been totally away from YouTube for a bit, but I'm very excited to get back to it and share some more stuff with you guys. So yeah, thank you as always. Let's go. I just started sketching from these two references and doing a couple little architecture studies. I like to do an actual representation of the reference first, just to get a more clear understanding of the shapes and kind of get used to drawing those shapes and details and what makes up the major forms. And then I'll start creating some of my own sketches based on that reference and the first study I did. So just trying to take the major essence of that building and its major shapes and what makes it what it is, and use those to create my own designs. So I just started these on my iPad just for fun. Sometimes when I don't know what to draw or what to paint, I like to just find some cool images that I find interesting, and I'll just do little studies or sketches on my iPad. It's a good way to just get yourself drawing when you just don't have the energy or aren't in the right headspace to come up with unique ideas for like a big elaborate illustration or a concept. And I actually I feel like I've said this before, but I had no plans to make a finished illustration here. I just found myself getting to the end of these sketches and taking one of them and just starting to draw a little landscape with the building, with no expectations, or didn't really have a goal in mind. I just was kind of sitting on the couch and watching TV, and I just felt like seeing what would happen if I just started painting. So I didn't have any reference for the colors or the mood, but I did have an idea in my mind about the mood I wanted to go with, but I didn't take the time to get any references or anything. It was just very casual, and I figured I would see what I could come up with. I feel like sometimes I stop myself from drawing or painting because I don't have access to reference at the time. So if I'm, drawing on the front step and I realize I don't have my phone or my iPad and I'm drawing in my sketchbook, sometimes I feel like I can't draw for that reason, because whatever I draw isn't going to be well informed enough by a reference. And reference is really important, but I feel like it's also healthy to just draw from your imagination and see what you can come up with. If you go in with that expectation of not having any reference, just seeing what you can come up with based on your visual library and your muscle memory and the knowledge that you do have is a good exercise sometimes. It's not something I would recommend doing all the time, because I think you need to study from reference to build a visual library and build that muscle memory and those good instincts. But it's definitely fun to do every now and then, especially since you can't always rely on having reference. It's just not, you're not always going to have access to Google or, you know, reference material or books at your disposal whenever you feel like drawing. And sometimes you just don't feel like having the burden of having to look at your phone or have a book open next to you when you feel like drawing. It's much more lightweight to just be able to draw with a pen and a sketchbook without relying on having some kind of secondary device and figuring out where to set that up and, you know, having enough space around you. My idea for this image was this extremely isolated little, in my mind it's like a tavern, like a small tavern with maybe a few rooms, and I changed that back little section to be kind of like a stable or some kind of coverage or shelter where travelers could put their horse. And a lot of my images share this kind of absurd and just like really impractical setup, and it's something that I've always been attracted to, like this building that's so exposed to the water in this bay or the wherever this is, and just being on such a shallow bit of rock where any rogue waves could just completely drown the entire building. I really like creating concepts like that because it really makes me able to feel what it would be like to be there, and that helps me get into the right kind of mindset and feel inspired to create a specific mood. So yeah, like a wave might come and completely wash and fill this entire building, and maybe that's part of the building's history. Like maybe it's just really gross and damp and it's like a horrible place, but it's so isolated that if you're traveling in this region, it's literally the only shelter maybe for hundreds of miles. So it's cool to imagine those things and imagine the inside and what this exposure would mean for what it smells like, what the temperature is like, what the people are like. It's that kind of stuff I really like thinking about, and it makes me it really inspires me and makes it much more fun to work on this image. So as always in Procreate for me, I spend a lot of time just experimenting with brushes and seeing what kind of textures I can get. I have my system pretty much nailed down in Photoshop, so I consistently go for the same tools and use the same methods and brushes to depict certain textures, and it's kind of it's very familiar to me. So in Procreate, I'm still just trying to match that familiarity that I have in Photoshop. So I'm always messing with brushes and textures just because there's subtle differences. The pen pressure is a little bit different, behaves a little differently, and there's some tools in Photoshop that don't exist in Procreate. So figuring out different methods to achieve the same effect So you can, in this background here, I worked for so long just trying to achieve a specific effect I wanted for those cliffs, and it got so long to the point where I felt like it was going to dominate the whole process video. But I think when you're recording these things, it's always, when you're actually doing it, it feels like you're taking much longer than it will reflect in the actual video. Once the time lapse gets exported, it always goes by way faster than I think it's going to. So I'm trying to keep the background very subdued and simplified, but I'm trying to include enough information in the cliffs so that they read as so that the scale reads properly. Since they're really big and really far away, I have to include some kind of information that will give the illusion that of their actual size. Most of these images start with most of them start based on my personal IP and just trying to explore locations and develop that world. So that's where this one started, kind of just trying to come up with things that maybe I'll end up really liking and further fleshing out for my personal project. Most of them won't get that far and won't be satisfactory enough in my mind to actually pursue further. But that's why I do it. I just want to do these little illustrations and mood sketches to see if it's worth pursuing further. And then I could design the physical traits of this environment. I could design other architecture that might be here and start thinking about the culture and the people that live here and the wildlife and things like that. And I experimented a bit with how I wanted the water to be. In my mind, I imagined the water being very rough, so we won't see crisp reflections in the water because it's being kind of brushed by this strong wind, and that's going to cause just a much flatter kind of treatment of the water and its reflections, and it's more or less just going to reflect an average color of the sky. So I tried a couple different ways to as far as how I wanted to achieve this effect. I used a lot of textured brushes and trying to create broad shapes and shadows on the water. And this right here, like I was happy with this, but it didn't have the kind of blowing wind that I couldn't feel the wind on the water as much as I wanted to. So if you're not getting the effect you want, it's always better to just nip that in the bud and not try to, don't just settle for what you've already got just because you've spent some time on it. It's always worth it to go and make adjustments no matter what stage you're at, if in the end you know it's going to improve your image. That's something that over time I've learned, because I used to just commit to a less than ideal image just because I felt I've already spent so much time on it. I'll just call it done and just accept whatever's here. But it's always worth it to go back and just kind of continue setting your standard a little bit higher. that's it for this one. You guys, thank you so much for sticking around the channel. It really means a lot. If you like what I'm doing, please consider liking the video and subscribing, and please keep giving me feedback and leaving comments, because it really means a lot to me to connect with the community. And I think it just helps everyone to see the commonality of things that we all are experiencing as artists that you might feel like is unique to you. I think there's some comfort in seeing that most of us are experiencing the same struggles, the same highs and lows. So I think that's a real benefit, and I am really honestly very grateful for the community you guys have built around my channel. So yeah, thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next video.